Why the Orlando Magic are about to shock everyone. For a decent amount of time now, it's been very clear that the Orlando Magic have been in the rebuild process. But after some of the players they were able to bring in via the draft and some other factors I'll mention later in this video, I do actually think the Magic are going to surprise a lot of people during this upcoming season. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports. I make opinionated NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention that I recently started up an MMA channel, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. When you look at somewhat of the recent history of the Orlando Magic, it clearly just hasn't been good. They were barely able to make it to the NBA playoffs, and even during those couple seasons where they were able to, they weren't necessarily able to do all that much, losing in the first round. But when you look at the Magic more specifically, since they started their rebuild process officially at least, they've definitely made some poor decisions over the years that push themselves back. And I actually mention this a lot of times in my videos, but whenever you're a team that's headed in the direction of a rebuild, the most important thing you can have is the right management at the top. And I'm talking about the general manager and president of basketball operations. Because when you talk about the best teams in the NBA, they all have great management. Now, of course, they also have great players, but a huge reason for why they were able to acquire those guys in the first place is due to their management. And when you look at the Orlando Magic during their previous regime, I do think they were struggling a lot with not only drafting effectively, but also making some trades that really didn't make all that much sense. But when you look at the new regime that the Magic have brought in somewhat recently, I do feel as if they're doing a much better job in both of those departments. I think they've made some trades that really benefited them not only in the short term, but also in the long term, while also at the same time drafting relatively effectively. Now, it has been somewhat early on, and I guess we don't necessarily know for sure if they're drafting effectively, but I do like a lot of the players that they have been drafting as of late. But now, a question that a lot of you may be thinking at this point is, why do I think the Magic are going to surprise a lot of people this season? Now, it comes down to a couple different factors, but the main factor that I want to touch upon is Paolo Banchero. Now, during his rookie season, he played extremely well, averaging 20 points per game on 6.9 boards and 3.7 assists. And even besides those great statistics, when you just watch him out there, it's pretty clear that Banchero was an extremely talented player and a guy who was going to be a huge part of the Magic's future for years to come. Just looking at Banchero in his rookie season, it was pretty clear that he was an extremely talented offensive player. He had an okay ability to shoot that 3-point jump shot. Now, of course, you would like to see him shoot a little bit of a higher percentage, as he only shot around 30% from deep in his rookie year, but he definitely had the capability to do so, and going forward from here, you would only expect him to get better in that department. But mostly where Banchero did most of his damage was either in the mid-range area, whether you talk about a one-dribble pull-up, post turnaround fadeaway, cross over into a mid-range jumper, sidestep, or step back. Basically, from that mid-range area, Banchero had a lot of different abilities that made him a very efficient and a very effective offensive player. But even besides that, driving all the way to the basket, Banchero did a great job at that as well, as he had a really nice ability to finish through contact and get N1 finishes, but at the same time, he had a really nice ability to dunk over players at times as well, with that pretty good athleticism that he does possess. Now, he was also able to put up floaters in the lane, and overall, I think when you look at Banchero's game, he's just one of those guys that has a really good size out there, and he's just a very talented and very diverse offensive player that is only going to get better with time. But the next reason for why I think the Magic are going to surprise a lot of people is due to Franz Wagner. So ever since Wagner made it to the NBA, he's been extremely impressive, as during his rookie season, he averaged around 15 points per game on 4.5 boards and 2.9 assists. And he was doing a lot of his damage with that catch and shoot 3-point jump shot, but of course he also at the same time had a nice ability to drive all the way to the basket. But after that pretty impressive rookie season, he followed it up with an even more impressive second season, as he averaged 18 points per game on 4.1 boards and 3.5 assists. And during that season, once again, he was doing a lot of the same things he was doing effectively during his rookie year, but also getting a little bit better in those departments. Like that 3-point jump shot shooting, for example, he bumped it up to around 36% in his second year, but also he was doing an even better job at those other things as well. And I'm talking about his ability to drive all the way to the basket, his mid-range shooting ability, ability, his overall basketball IQ, his ability to play winning basketball, he was getting a lot better at a lot of those different things that really helped out not only himself individually, but the Orlando Magic as a team as well. And I think going forward from here, similar to Banchero, Franz Wagner is only going to get better with time, as he has proven that so far in his short NBA career. So I definitely do have pretty high expectations for Wagner, not only going into this next season, but also going into the long-term future as well. Now, the next factor for why I think the Magic are going to surprise a lot of people during this upcoming season is due to their rookies. Now, the Magic did bring in a couple different rookies, but the main guy that I'm personally focused on is Anthony Black. Now, Anthony Black is a guy who's somewhat of a project in my opinion, but he's a project that's worth taking. He's a guy that has tremendous size for a point guard in being 6'7" out there, and he has tremendous passing and playmaking abilities. But although he's very impressive in those two departments, in terms of his overall scoring ability, it's definitely a weakness of his. As although he does have an ability to shoot that 3-point jump shot at an okay percentage, and he has the capability to drive all the way to the basket, his scoring ability at this point definitely isn't something that's a strength of his game, as he's more so of a pass-first point guard. But although there were other point guards in this year's draft that are more impressive offensive players, I do think you're getting a lot with Anthony. I think you're getting a guy that has a capability to run an NBA offense on day one, while also at the same time being a guy who has a perfect build to potentially be a really good scorer down the road. And I do think he has shown some abilities and some flashes of what he could potentially be offensively during his short time in college. And I do think if the Magic do a nice job at developing him, I think he could eventually be a really good offensive player. Because when you look at the NBA over the years, there have been countless examples of players that were at a really good size, had a really good defensive ability, but weren't necessarily the best offensive players. But over the years, they were able to do a really nice job at slowly developing that offensive ability, and they turn into really great players. Some guys that come to mind when thinking about these players are guys like Jimmy Butler and Kawhi Leonard. Now, of course, I'm not necessarily saying that Anthony Black is going to be one of those players, but I'm just saying I do think it's a risk that's worth taking. So overall, going forward with the Orlando Magic, I do like a lot of what they have. I like a lot of the players they have on the roster, whether you talk about guys they brought into this season, either via the draft, via free agency, or even some of the players they brought in the past. But besides that, I'm also a big fan of their general manager, I'm a big fan of their head coach, and I just think the Magic have done a much better job at this point at hiring the right people in the right positions, which has been something that they've really been struggling with over the last 10 or so seasons prior. So overall, as I mentioned before, I do think the Magic have a really bright future ahead of themselves, but even going into this next season, I actually do have a little bit of higher expectations than maybe a lot of other people would have for this organization. But I guess only time will tell what does end up happening for the Magic, not only during this upcoming season, but also in the long-term future as well. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think the Magic have a chance to shock a lot of people this season, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out, guys.